in the name of our God, I ask you to have mercy upon the people in our country who are scared now. There are gay, lesbian, and transgender children in Democratic, Republican, and independent families, some who fear for their lives. And the people who pick our crops and clean our office buildings, who labor in poultry farms and meat packing plants, who wash the dishes after we eat in restaurants and work the night shifts in hospitals, they may not be citizens or have the proper documentation.
When we walked in there, like, I did not expect this to blow up. I did not expect this to be a newsworthy event in any way. I expected this to sort of be, I don't know, perfunctory. You know, you go in and you think it's going to be a prayer service, and there's going to be some talk of national unity, and hey, we pray for the country. We pray that, I don't know, maybe the economy will go well, and we pray for the safety of our soldiers, and just very basic statements that you normally hear at a service, and that we hope the country will be successful and we can all come together, which in fact was really the majority of her sermon was talking about that. And she said, I'm against the culture of the culture of gotcha. I'm against the culture of using this caustic process to be able to garner hatred and all of these things. Well, that's kind of interesting. And then she goes and does that at the very end, throws that little stinger on, and then jumps all over CNN, because that's exactly what she wanted to do the entire time. By the way, Scott Bessent, who was also there, has already released an open letter to her calling for her to apologize, which I certainly think that she should. And within moments of this, I said that we should really look at the tax-exempt status of said national cathedral when you're having people like that run the place.
She, as you point out, undermined her own sermon. The opening to it was perfectly fine, calling for unity. I am all for unity, actually, and I think we should find commonality when it is possible. But then she gave a deeply divisive and downright disgusting sermon on how Americans don't have the right to enforce basic national laws and on how we should trans little kids. So that was really bizarre. Her sermon was so egregious that no one is even talking about the other slightly odd aspects of the ceremony, notably that there was a Muslim call to prayer. There was a reading from the Quran, and then a Muslim call to prayer, which is no knock on our Muslim friends. We love our Muslim friends. But it's an odd thing to hear a Muslim call to prayer in a cathedral. A cathedral is supposed to be a Christian house of worship. I suppose we hear it in the Hagia Sophia, but it's for different reasons. So what they clearly were trying to do, they brought in some white guy who has become a Buddhist, and they had all sorts of odd things there. But what they wanted to do was be totally inclusive of everything. But the problem is, you can't really include everything, because going back to good old Uncle Aristotle, there's a law of non-contradiction. You can't simultaneously hold opposing things to be true. And I think this is actually a big theme of the opening days of the administration. We want to bring everyone in. We want national unity. President Trump says, I'm going to be a great president for everyone. Everyone's going to do better on my watch. But we need to have certain limits here, okay? The most basic one from her sermon being the difference between boys and girls. We need to have limits. We need to know what it is that we believe. Are we, as we've been told from the beginning of our country, one nation under God that believes in certain unalienable rights? Are we, as John Adams said, founded on the principles of Christianity? Are we, as John Jay said, so happy to have been birthed as a nation with this common religion? Or is it just totally up for grabs? I think in recent years, Christianity has tried to be absolutely everything to everyone, and we've lost our identity. Just as in politics, we've lost our national identity.
I just have to say, the idea that the National Cathedral is run by this woke junta of Episcopalians just clearly flies in the face of everything that we stand as a nation that's been constituted. By the way, some of the religions you mentioned right there, or the groups that you mentioned, we're talking about like 1% of the population. And America has always been a Christian majority nation. It remains a Christian majority nation. That doesn't mean we can't be ecumenical. That doesn't mean that we can't be pluralistic. And I certainly understand all of those things. But going into this, we were not looking for a circus. And they absolutely turned it into the circus, with the Bishopess becoming the chief clown in the three-ring act, which, of course, President Trump called out, as he rightfully should.
That's right. Different religions believe different things. And so we like to be tolerant. We like to be gracious. We like to welcome people. But, to use the example of Islam, Islam has a view of God that is very different than the Christian view of God. The Christian view of God identifies God as both will and intellect, that God is synonymous with logic. In the beginning was the Logos, and the Logos was with God, and the Logos was God. The Islamic view is a voluntarist view that says that Allah is pure will, that Allah is not necessarily tied with logic. So your mileage may vary on what conclusion you come to, but those are just different views. And so you can't simultaneously embrace all these kinds of religions. And what you end up with is just an abandonment of your traditional religion, the true religion, as I would call it. And you end up with this kind of feel-good, happy-clappy gobbledygook that really isn't good for anyone. The one real positive thing I would say about this sermon, though, is the blowback that it got. Because we just had a referendum on these kinds of crazy views, and Trump won. And Trump didn't just win in the Electoral College, he won the popular vote. And he won 1 in 5 black male voters, which is a huge number compared to recent years. He won almost half of Hispanics. He actually won a lot of Muslim votes. He won 40% of women under the age of 30. So we had this referendum, and her pitiful, ridiculous remarks struck me as the last gasp of a dying and deservedly dying ideology as we move into something newer and better, and maybe a golden age of America, as President Trump calls it.